Hi, Vincent Hall. Don't touch that dial. You're about to enter the twilight zone, or more like it, low light photography or evening photography. Take your pick, but stay tuned. Hi, Vincent Hall, and welcome to another edition of our photography class. If you're wondering, why am I outside and why do I have a dark background instead of my usual front door? It's because this week we're going to be focusing on, pun intended, nighttime photography or low light photography. Low light photography follows suit with our directional light project that we did 2 weeks ago, north, south, east, west lighting, and it gave you a lot of different options on shading. This project, low light photography, dusk, pre-dawn, however you want to look at it, is based on the idea that there's not going to be a lot of shadows and contrast to your photos, but some beautiful rich colors and intensity. It's fun to play around with it. Most of you have a cell phone, and if your cell phone takes pictures and it's a later model in the last couple of years, you'll probably find it does just beautifully with nighttime photography. You don't need fancy equipment. But for those of you that have fancy equipment or better cameras that you might want to try using the DSLRs, simply have your ISO set high enough so that you can capture detail without a lot of available light. You can see the shadows on my face change a little bit as the surrounding light changes, but the idea is we're going to be exploring several different photos that I've taken at nighttime, different times of the night, different times of year. You can try taking pictures of things lit up from the outside, or you can try taking pictures of things that have no light around them at all except the ambient light from wherever it might be, a street light or the moon, or as the sun sets and a little bit of reflection light coming from clouds and things like that. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. We've got some samples coming up and I'll be talking about them this time through the computer as we look at them on Photoshop, because video on a cell phone does not work well at night with no light. So let's take a look. We're going to start by looking at some images here that were captured after the sun went down using my iPhone. I'm keeping this simple with an iPhone. Many of you have Android or iPhone models that you'll be able to use for this assignment. Those of you using 35mm cameras, DSLRs, feel free to play around with your settings accordingly. You'll have some different options, but I want to make sure everyone from beginner to advanced can appreciate this fine art of low light photography, which personally I find very beautiful. If you look at this first image, it's, I think they call it like a grape holly. I'm not sure of the plant. Somebody may be able to correct me on that. But some of the leaves have turned yellow and orange. In the daytime, this is washed out. But once the sun goes down, my camera is able to capture all the subtleties of these beautiful greens and different orange tones and even some purpley tones and some very small low lit areas back here. I'm going to go through all these images and then I'll pick a few to show you what Photoshop can do to edit them as well. Going to this next one, again, it's nighttime, but this is one of the downsides of the iPhone 11 when you shoot with nighttime photography. It's going to almost brighten the sky too much. To me, this just doesn't even look like it's nighttime, but it really was. There was no light in the sky. It's just overcompensating. But I wanted you to be able to see those nice orange tones that I was talking about. This one might be my favorite, and I'm going to probably crop out the background. There was no additional light coming on this other than the way my camera captured this plant, a hosta, with a few light sources coming from neighbors' houses, but that was it. And I might be taking this background darker or cropping it, but I really like how the low light photography can actually make things a nice dark green. Here I turned on my porch light. You might be able to take some pictures with light coming from your apartment, from the street lights below, and this is a little out of focus here, but I just wanted you to see how bright the colors are when you're shooting after dark. This is what can go wrong unless you want things to look eerie with low light photography. It's nighttime and my street has those sodium vapor street lights. And look what it's done. It has blown everything out and made it almost like a surreal algae green. This could be corrected in Photoshop, but why bother? Sometimes it's better to just leave photos go. If you like that really otherworldly look, this might be for you, but personally for me, it's a no-go. So I'm going to close that image so we don't have to worry about that one. This is a common photo many of us have in our repertoire. Pictures of buildings from the night with the lights on in the building where we're outside looking in. This is the front of my house, so no big excitement there, but porch light adds some interesting rays of light. Here, you get a lot of reflected light coming off the siding, the edges of the bushes, and there's just a nice play of darks and lights and just enough light in here to make it an interesting composition. Speaking of, if we remember last week with rule of thirds, this one, the dark shadows of all the bushes and the darkness of the house and the dark trees create our 2/3, 1/3 rule. So I just thought I'd share that with you. This is another one of those sodium vapor lights from across the street, but I kind of liked what it did with the tree bark. If I zoom in here a little bit, you can see you're going to get softer focus when you do night photography. But it does give you this kind of almost Kodachrome look to it. If you shot with slide film before, that's another street light back there, but some really cool cast shadows. This one, again at night, very selective focus in here. Another holly bush. There was absolutely no light coming in. My camera and my phone is compensating for that. This one, a lot of us do that, looking up through the trees at night, and again, getting a little overcompensation in the sky. And this one here, the moon is there, but it's hard to see. So sometimes, even though you think you're getting it, you might not be. I just wanted to show you what the iPhone's going to do, and we're going to make this more dramatic. So it will be more interesting than you think. This one I took before. Obviously before this virus hit in, because I have a lot of jet entrails that I no longer see anymore going over my house. But this was the supermoon in March, and the trees were not yet budding. I thought it was interesting. This is the moon. Of course, it's blown out, but it does create a kind of eerie look to it, and many of us have those pictures. So these are the ones we're going to be working with in Photoshop. I just wanted to give you a sense of what nighttime photography looks like and some of the things you can do. Starting with this one, because it's not something we're going to be editing, but I wanted to show you what I think is probably one of those more omnipresent nighttime photos that a lot of us have, which are those street scenes on vacation that are very lit up. This is in Dublin, Ireland, and it's just a nighttime scene with the reflection in the river here and the bridge. I'm not going to do anything to this in here. There was no additional light other than what was shown. So, you know, the street lights have that luminous glow and just enough to almost make it an abstract. So if you go through some of your old travel photos, my guess is you'll find some interesting nighttime photography that you've already shot. This is another one I wanted to show you that I took with my iPhone. I had been shooting with my DSLR for a job in New Mexico. These are the Sandia Mountains, and the sun had already gone down. This is with the iPhone, and I wanted to show you how the iPhone will overcompensate. This was evening, sun gone down, yet you can see how the mountains still have a lot of light. The dark storm clouds are coming in the evening. It almost looks a little ominous. It wasn't as bad as it seems. But you can fix some of this in Photoshop by going back in and giving some of these areas, making it a little darker if it looks too light. What I like about it, even though it's nighttime photography that has a little more light, is look how rich and soft these browns are. It's not something you're going to get in the daytime because these are going to pick up too much reflection and they're going to get blown out. Then these trees become almost a dark green as they start to lose color. We know when the sun goes down, we lose our ability to see colors, and things do become more black and white if you're outside or neutral tones rather, without the addition of available light from another source. In Photoshop though, I can go to adjustments and I can go to curves. And in curves here, I'm going to see that there are some things that are dark, but I can make them darker. So if I bring this down just a little bit, I'm tweaking my middle values and making them darker. I feel like this now has more of a nighttime scene. All I did was tweak these browns a little bit. If you're in my photo class, we'll be going over this in the Zoom meeting. If you're not, when you join us down in the photo room, I'll be happy to show you how this works. Here we come up to another one of those supermoon pictures. I found this one after I talked to you, and this was another view that I took from a different tree. These are interesting in and of themselves. They are going to get grainy, but boy, if you can find when the moon is full, getting some shots and using the moon as your light source, how beautiful that is. I checked last night and I think we're at a half moon. I'm not sure if it's waning or waxing, but if you're taking these in the next couple of days, there should be some moonlight that you can work with. This was the brighter one where the supermoon was really lighting the sky. And you know, now that I look at this, I feel like the sky is too bright and I can't really tell what's going on. And the light from my neighbors' houses is distracting. So in Photoshop, for those of you who have never done Photoshop with us before, here's the magic. This is a patch tool. And if I move it over, I can select an area, pick what I want, and boom, everything I don't want is gone. Now we can go into levels, and what I can tell it to do here in output, this is telling me where my whites are, but I don't want my whites to be so white. So as I start to bring this down, notice what's happening to the sky. It's not as blown out, and it's starting to really get that intriguing look. I think I'll be right there. Quick fix. So it's easy if we check on history here. Of course, my history window's not open, never fails. We'll go to our beginning, and all we did was tweak in levels how to make those lights darker, and now I have a much more, I think, moody, interesting picture for a moonshot, because moonshots can be fun, but they can also be a little bit tricky. We'll just work our way back through. If I do the same thing here, going back to image, adjustment, levels, and I'm telling it to take my light areas and make them darker, and I'm telling it to take the dark areas and make them darker here, and make these middle values even darker still, I can maybe make this shot better, but I still don't like it. Sometimes you have to just know when to not continue with an image, and on this one, I would say no. Don't need to keep working on that. That's not one of the ones I wanted to work on. I think I'm going to go back here. This is fun, and a lot of us can do this. This is my poor dog Peanut wondering why I'm outside and he's stuck inside. But if you can go walk outside your apartment and just shoot inside and get some of these fun lines. Maybe you have a French door or some different Venetian blinds that might be partially open that you can see through. Getting those patterns outside and having them repeat inside can make for some interesting pictures. I even have a little bit of Peanut's shadow here. I don't need to see too much of Peanut. It's the idea of something looking out, and it doesn't have to even be anything. It could be a light on just inside your house and creating some interesting shadows and lines. Later on this summer, we're going to be talking about pattern and line, and here's a good example of what that could look like. Here's one I wanted to work on. I love the greens and how beautiful this is. To me, this almost looks like a painting. And for those of you that are painters watching this, I just want to remind you that it was Rembrandt that said, "The shadows tell the story." And boy, do I believe that. When you're painting, I always like to paint from the shadows and bring in the highlights and the mid values. And in a photo, look how those shadows, they're so deep. This just seems to emerge from nowhere. It has such a beauty to it and such just a saturation that I really get excited about seeing. But that said, in Photoshop, we can take the saturation and just boost it a little bit more, but that might make that orange a little too much. So I'll just maybe boost my greens because I want these greens to stand out just a little bit more. There we go. So now we have this picture before, which I think is beautiful, and after, which just added a little more density to it, something that's a little more interesting. That way we can check what's going on in the background, but also have our foreground not blown out, which is key. So I would definitely save that one. As we're coming down here, we will not work on that one. Here's my other one I'm going to work on in the last one. For this one on rule of thirds, I'm going to get rid of some of that background. And then what I'm going to do under image, adjustment, and levels, the same thing again. I'm going to bring my lights down, my lights down on output so that I'm getting everything just a little denser. And I'm going to make my darks darker so I get a little more drama here because I would really like this to not be so blah in the middle. So what I'm doing here, this shows me that everything that's dark is going to be darker. And this is everything that's light is going to be less light or also darker. So I'm moving that down. Personally, let's check the rule of thirds. Yep, I like this one a whole lot better than that one. That just looks like some weird flash thing. This has some mood. And that's kind of what you're going for here, which is the mood element. We won't work on that one. We're just kind of quickly going through. This one is fine as is. We talked about the rule of thirds with it. And we're back to these sodium vapor light pictures and other ones that we're probably not going to work on too much. This one maybe has some pattern merit to it, but I don't think I'm going to worry about that. I wanted to come back to this one because even though I liked it better, this jet thing is really going to distract me. It looks like a scratch in a picture. It's not, but it looks like it. So I wanted to show you, if you're not in my class, one more really cool tool. And if you are in my class, just a reminder, it's called the Spot Healing Brush. And it looks like a Band-Aid, so we call it the Band-Aid. And all you do is pass over the areas that you don't like, and it gets rid of it. So if we go back to before I used it, we've got this line here from a jet landing at National. And now Reagan National, shows you how long I've lived here. Now we have it gone. And that's using this little Band-Aid tool. I hope this has given you some ideas. We're going to see some still images in the slideshow that always follows these presentations that I hope tweak your interest in trying some low light photography. I hope you found some inspiration in getting outside in the evening hours or in the pre-dawn hours if you're an early riser and getting some images that you wouldn't normally consider photo worthy. Sometimes the simplest things, a plant, an animal you might find roaming around. Be careful of that. I found a raccoon under my car last night, so I wasn't going to take a picture of that while I was out doing some shots for this video. But anyway, looking at ideas that might inspire you, looking at the contrast of the highlights and the shadows, looking at the richness of the colors as they just come through the darkness, just those little areas that are hit, or looking at the design elements of architecture when it's lit up from within and you're outside kind of almost voyeuristically looking in and seeing all the lights. Those are ways that you can use nighttime photography to your advantage. One of the words, again, that I love, it's Italian, it's chiaroscuro, but it's using the shadows and the darkness to make the image what it is rather than the light and the colors that come along with using a lot of bright lights that we normally associate with photography. This is a chance to step out of your comfort zone, try something different, and hope you enjoy it. In any event, I will see you next week, Vincent Hall Photographers, with another episode. Till then, be well, stay safe. I miss everybody. And I also wanted to thank everybody for this. I was so honored to receive this certificate last Friday. Words cannot describe how much I enjoy working with all of you, and I miss everyone. I look forward to seeing everyone soon, but trust me when I tell you, I'm the one that's appreciative of all of you and you being a part of my life. I always tell the Art Center folks my favorite 2 days of the week are Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's still true even though I'm seeing you all virtually. So thank you so much for that lovely honor. It truly means a lot to me. I look forward to seeing everyone soon in person, but again, like I always say, stay safe and be well. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.